Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the deeply rooted maternal traditions of Eastern Sri Lankan Muslims. And you know, what's absolutely fascinating about this topic is how beautifully it blends regional South Asian heritage with profound Islamic beliefs. The community literally took the foundational cultural aspects of their geography and adapted them perfectly to align with Islamic practices. It's a true melting pot of tradition.
So let's set our scene in ancient Eastern Sri Lanka. In this vibrant coastal region, having a child wasn't just a personal milestone for a family. No, it was a profound elevation of a woman's social status. Every single stage of a mother's journey, from those very first signs of pregnancy all the way to the baby's early years, was honored with this deep cultural reverence. There was intense community involvement and an incredibly reassuring sense of shared responsibility. You were never doing it alone.
Here is our agenda for today. We'll be covering 1. Heritage and pregnancy traditions. 2. Clay bread and generous gifts. 3. The traditional home birth. 4. Postnatal care and protection. 5. 7th and 40th day ceremonies. And 6. Milestones, first solid food.
All right, Section 1. Heritage and pregnancy traditions.
The timeline of these events really maps out some pivotal cultural milestones. You have to realize, this wasn't just a medical process to them, it was a meticulously crafted social roadmap. It ensured a mother was supported every step of the way, starting from early gestation all the way through the celebration of the infant's first tooth.
Okay, imagine this. During the traditional period of pregnancy cravings, which they called Isaka Kalam, the community stepped up immediately. As soon as traditional midwives confirmed the pregnancy, the sisters-in-law would get right to work, lovingly preparing these highly specific, fiery and sour pastes. Just picture the intense flavors: salt, green chilies, tamarind, mango, dried fish, and onions. All of this was roasted over embers and ground on a traditional stone just to soothe the mother's very distinct cravings. Talk about a support system.
But it wasn't just about satisfying cravings. Expectant mothers were fiercely protected through strict safety taboos. For example, during solar and lunar eclipses, mothers were kept in strict seclusion. We're talking avoiding cooking or even cutting fish until the eclipse had entirely passed. They also completely avoided vibrant colors like bright red and green, restricted heavy foods like papaya and pineapple, and absolutely prohibited traveling during midday and night. It was quite literally a community-wide effort to shield the mother from any unseen harm.
Moving right along to Section 2. Clay bread and generous gifts.
Now, you might be wondering about some of the more unique cravings. What you have to hear about this highly localized custom from the village of Samanthrai. Pregnant mothers there actually consumed something called kudaman roti, which was a bread made from purified white clay. That's right, clay. They would gather it, wash it thoroughly to remove impurities, spread it out on a large cloth to dry in the sun, kind of like flatbread, and then break it into small pieces to eat or roast over embers. While it served a strong traditional purpose for nourishment back then, it did eventually fade out as modern medical understanding evolved, mostly because we now know that eating clay can signal an iron deficiency or potentially cause infections, but historically, a truly fascinating practice.
Fast forward to the 6th month, and the groom's family would present the Talai Palai Seppu. They'd bring these incredibly generous assortments of steamed sweets and fruits, but here's the catch. They strictly kept everything in odd numbers for good fortune. The absolute centerpiece of this was the intricately steamed Palai Kolakata. This was a double-layered dumpling where a larger dumpling actually encases a smaller one. It served as this beautiful, edible metaphor for the mother carrying her child. Just a gorgeous tradition.
Up next, Section 3. The traditional home birth.
So, before the days of modern medicine and hospitals, births happened right at home, entirely orchestrated by the Maruthuvichi. These women were highly respected, traditionally trained local midwives. Honestly, they were the true ancient obstetricians of their community. To help ease the delivery, they would prepare a powerful herbal stimulant called gula makayam. This was a potent mix of dried herbs, garlic, and mustard ground together with plant sap. It effectively stimulated contractions and helped safely separate the umbilical cord.
The very moments immediately following birth followed a strict, highly sacred sequence. The Maruthuvichi would cut the umbilical cord while fervently reciting the Kalima, which is the declaration that there is no deity but Allah. They'd recite it 7 times for a boy and 9 times for a girl. Instantly, relatives would toss coins into a tray as a joyful reward for the midwife. Then, the newly cleaned baby was handed straight to the father to ensure that the very first words the infant ever heard were profound declarations of Islamic faith. The father, or sometimes a respected family elder, would gently whisper the adhan into the baby's right ear, followed by the iqama in the left. Think about how profound that is. It brings this moment of absolute auditory reverence to the ancient birthing room. Right after this, a respected elder would perform tenik. This involved rubbing just a tiny bit of softened date or honey on the roof of the newborn's mouth, which beautifully symbolized the passing on of good character and sweetness.
Let's dive into Section 4, Postnatal Care and Protection.
After the birth, the mother's healing was absolutely paramount. Mothers were kept indoors for days and fed deeply nourishing traditional sensory diets. This consisted of varathu, which is a really rich country chicken broth infused with spices to help reduce pain, and miliganam, a restorative concoction made of garlic, fenugreek, and dried freshwater fish. This highly specific, protein-rich diet ensured optimal recovery and healthy milk production. At the same time, newborns were seen as incredibly vulnerable to negative energy. To ward off the evil eye, families engaged in highly specific protective customs. I mean, they pulled out all the stops. They used everything from rice ink spots dotted right on the baby's cheeks to the vibrant 7-colored mama newel thread that was specially woven and gifted by the maternal uncle. They even placed iron objects like horseshoes, nails, and nutcrackers around the bed for 40 days to create this invisible, impenetrable shield of protection around both the mother and the child.
Which brings us to Section 5, 7th and 40th day ceremonies. You can really see a beautiful progression between these two vital communal dates. The 7th-day Akika rituals are heavily focused on naming, charity, and sacrifice. And then this beautifully steps up to the grand 40th day conclusion of maternal seclusion. That 40th day serves as a massive family reunion filled with Fatiha recitations, grand feasting, and the lavish gifting of gold.
Let's zoom in on day number 7 for a second. On this exact day, the newborn's head was entirely shaved by the Marathavici, but they didn't just throw the hair away. The shaved hair was meticulously weighed, and the family would donate its exact equivalent weight in gold or its cash value directly to the needy. This is also the day the baby is officially named by an elder or a scholar. Following the naming, the Akikeya feast takes place. Flawless goats are sacrificed, and the meat, which is often cooked into a rich aromatic biryani, is generously distributed to relatives and the poor alike.
And finally, Section 6, Milestones. First solid food.
So right around the 6-month mark, the baby takes a massive developmental step, eating solid foods. Now, this transition was a delicate, highly intentional process. It was always initiated with a drop of sacred Zamzam water, holy water brought all the way from Mecca. Only after this spiritual blessing would they introduce a tiny amount of milk-mashed rice. And eventually, that was followed by fresh fruit juices and strained porridge as the baby grew.
And then comes what is probably one of the most delightful events of the whole shebang. The emergence of the first tooth sparked the Palu Kozukatai. This was a breathtakingly colorful children's festival. Neighborhood kids were invited over and seated in a big circle. The baby, who was just experiencing their first tooth, would be gently covered with a white cloth. Then, family members would literally shower colorful rice dumplings, rock sugar, raisins, and actual coins right over the seated infant's head. The surrounding children would eagerly scramble to collect all the showered sweets and coins. It's just an incredibly joyful, sensory-rich celebration of a major new milestone.
These traditions, from the clay bread of Samantharai to the sacred whispers of the Adhan, well, they aren't just history. They're the vibrant social fabric of Eastern Sri Lankan Muslims. So how can we ensure that this deeply localized, sensory-rich fusion of South Asian heritage and Islamic tradition continues to be documented and preserved for future generations? What parts of your own heritage echo these kinds of communal bonds? Thank you so much for joining on this explainer today, and I highly encourage you to keep exploring the history that shapes us.